everybody. Welcome again to Heal the Shadow in Your Relationships 2. And today I am so pleased to have with me Sirah Vettese. Hi, Sirah. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be in your space and to be part of something you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to tell our viewers a little bit about you. Sirah helps individuals increase their interpersonal skills, establishing effective and meaningful professional as well as romantic relationships. Her groundbreaking work helps people unlock counterproductive beliefs, providing them with new insight into wholeness, which is what we're all talking about here. She is a sought-after breakthrough life coach, consultant. Her contributions have been recognized in the media. She's traveled widely, lectured across the globe. And her book, Spiritual Makeover, 10 Practices for Falling in Love with Your Life, is available on Amazon. She's also written ebooks, Setting Boundaries with a Difficult and Unavailable Man, Tips and Tools to Stop Attracting the Wrong Guy, Getting Over the Unavailable Man and Finding True Love. And she also wrote What Happened to the Prince I Married? Spiritual Healing for a Wounded Relationship. These all sound fantastic. She co-authored Life Mates, the Love Fitness Program for a Lasting Relationship, and as well as over 42 best-selling audio programs. So Sirah, it's truly a pleasure to have you here. And thanks again for joining us for Heal the Shadow in Your Relationships.
Thank you. It really is an honor to be in your space and to be part of this program. So thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. And so tell us what your definition of the shadow is.
Well, my definition, which is probably many people's definition, is the shadow is the absence of light. And I think that light is love. And so whenever we take ourselves out of the darkness and into the light, I mean, that expression is used over and over again with different metaphors. We feel emotionally secure. We feel happy. We feel uplifted. We grow our self-esteem and our self-love just through the practice of taking ourselves from a dark space emotionally into a lighter space. And I think that the tool that we must use is the tool of wisdom. I think when we desire to be wise or wiser than we are today, that is the vehicle on which our ability to grow and experience light in life becomes possible. It's like when you enter a room and it's dark and the sun shines in the room and all of a sudden, the light appears and everything looks so different and feels so different. We are like that.
Absolutely. So when you say the tool to use is wisdom, of course, there's a lot in the journey of acquiring that wisdom. So I'm going to ask you, how would you go about helping somebody address their blind spot?
That's a perfect question. First of all, if you feel afraid of it, you'll never get past it. And we always say what you resist will persist. If you have gratitude for what is coming your way and you welcome it, then it's a different feeling going into wanting to know. For example, when I'm coaching people, I will make them sit down and write 50 of their most negative patterns, and I talk to them about not being afraid to look inside and see what they truly know about themselves. So a negative pattern could be something as simple as being judgmental, being an angry person, being harboring resentment that they've never, they haven't shown up in forgiveness, or being an unforgiving person. There's so many of them. Of course, the list is long, but truly each of us have hundreds and hundreds of those types of patterns, and that's our shadow. So if we are afraid of it, we'll never get to open the door and let the light in. And I would say, you are a master of your own body, mind, and your word. And your word comes through thinking, thought.
It's such a good point that it's amazing that you have people write out 50 of their negative patterns. And like you say, we have hundreds of them. I sometimes will get a client that says, okay, I've identified finally my shadow belief. Like, the one. It's like, you keep asking, keep working with it, keep looking.
And belief systems are driven by our shadow. So one of the examples that I use from my personal experience is I was afraid of anger. So if you're afraid of anger, guess what you attract into your life? A lot of angry people, or anger shows up in different ways. And I know that's a childhood wound. It was derived from seeing my father, who was very violent and emotionally abusive and sometimes physically abusive towards my mother. And so I grew up fearing anger and thinking anger was bad. So as an adult, here I am, a 30-year-old, trying to run away from anything that, anybody that was angry. So I was never comfortable with conflict. Well, if you're not comfortable with conflict, then guess what? You can never resolve a problem. It's all these have tentacles that lead all the way back through your life story and become belief systems.
Yeah.
Anger is not okay as a belief system, but they start with a pattern that we adopt or rebel
Yeah.
from our early childhood experience. And so it's so healthy and wonderful and self-loving to just say that about yourself. Oh my God, I'm afraid of anger. And what is that doing that's hurting my life?
That is such a great point. I've got my own little personal experience with that, where my mother was, serious narcissist, and I've done so much work on my relationship with my mom, and after a while, attracting all these narcissists into my life.
And they're all a gift to you. You see, when you really get that, even though it's painful, sometimes you just get on your knees and say, why, oh, why have I attracted something that caused me so much pain as a child? But then when you really sit with it and you cry with it and you purge with it and you say, I'm going to love myself despite all this, the dark cloud lifts off of your body and your being. It's as if it separates itself out and it clears your brain. And all of a sudden, it's no longer there. It's there in your history, but it's not there in the narrative that goes on in your mind.
And it's not there in your emotions anymore. If you really, I love that you said you sit with it, you cry with it, you purge it. I mean, the point is to purge it rather than wallow in it.
and embrace it.
And embrace it.
And embrace it and say, it has shown up so much in my life. And then when you get to that point, you can really feel it. It's almost physical when it finally starts to leave your body.
Yes.
And then it is, I really am a believer in the narrative and what we continue to hold as belief systems and thought processes based on our previous life story. And, whether we continue to live it over and over again and allow it to be who we are, it is something very interesting to address within yourself, because if you really listen to what you're saying, you might be regurgitating the same old thing all the time.
Absolutely.
Or if you drive that conversation down a different road, that is history that doesn't follow you around.
Yes.
It's so powerful.
So do you think that's the key to accepting your own dark side?
I think that if you hold the idea that you actually can change your narrative, you were an abused child, what are you now? You're a soul living in full of light, experiencing love, and aware of your shadow, which gives you such freedom to enjoy the things that are important in life, like being in the present moment. Because here you are, right here, sitting in the truth of you as you are now.
So tell a new story, and with that story, still embrace the shadow part of you that you have come to know, and don't try to annihilate it or get rid of it or any of that stuff that we tend to do with parts of ourselves that we don't like.
Right. And one of my favorite things that I learned many years ago was a quote from Mother Teresa. She said that the reason she became a healer is because she knew she had a Hitler inside of her.
Whoa.
For a woman of that stature and power and worldly compassion, to own the Hitler inside of her, gives us hope in terms of what we're doing in our lives, and such freedom to live with a sense of value, you
That,
know.
yeah, that is so interesting. That is so, I can't imagine Mother Teresa having that side of her. But, I was raised by Catholic nuns myself, and I know they got real darn critical and controlling. So maybe that's what she's referring to.
She would have been referring to that, but I also heard personal stories from individuals who were near her. She was so conscious of her shadow that if she was ignoring somebody, she would stop in the hallway and address them because she could feel something was wrong and realize that she had done something wrong and own it. To me, that is an enlightened soul, and something we all want to be. We have the capacity to be that. So I want to be really specific as well, Jolie, and give you a tool for your listeners.
Yes,
And
please. Yeah.
one of them is something that I love. It's called the I am process. So when it comes to a pattern that you have addressed within yourself, whether it be you're a reactive person, you're a pleaser, you have, disapprove easily, or you're afraid of disapproval, any number of things, that when you recognize it, the I am process is that you identify it, you accept it, and you manage it. So I am, identify, accept, and manage. And the managing is the most important part, because if you catch yourself being irritable in a grocery line, for example, that's a pattern. You don't have to continue to behave that way. If you find yourself being judgmental when someone else is talking about something that you don't approve of, or you're judging who they are, you can step back from it, take a deep breath, and manage that feeling inside of you, because you want to correct it. You don't want it to, change who you are in that moment. So all these things can be corrected, but I find it personally to be a very valuable tool.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely awesome. Identify, accept, manage. I am. I love it.
I am.
I love it.
That's all it is.
That this is who I am. I'm showing up with all of me, not just part of me.
And I give the world my best self. I think that we have the opportunity to do that with all the information that we have in this day and age. This is the information age. Social networks moved so fast and so furious into the farthest reaches of the world that those of us that are exposed to new technology, psychological technology, spiritual technology, have the ability to transmute that energy out into the world and give without it being a direct give. And I think that's the beauty of what you're doing in this process. You're giving, in your way, such an incredible gift to the people that are exposed to the information.
Thank you.
Because that's coming from your heart, but it's also an expression of who you are. So we all have that capacity.
Well, thank you for that. So I do have a lot of viewers who are single, looking for a relationship, and I come across this a lot. They have a fear if they have been hurt in relationship before, which who hasn't? How do you help them to overcome their fear of being hurt?
Well, that's a really good question, because usually these fears have deep-seated roots that have taken, the roots have begun early in life. And of course, the more we have that fear, the more the fear is something we walk out into the world with, and people will look at us and they go, that person's afraid of being hurt just because of the behavior. So what I start with when I'm working with people is the intimacy that they have with themselves. Because until we're truly intimate with who we are as an individual, it's very, very difficult to become freer and more of the person that we would want to be without the hurt showing up for us and looking for somebody to love or love us in that same way. And, I can only relate in personal truths. And I think we have to know what our biggest desires are in an intimate relationship. So, for example, for me, I'm happily married. I am so lucky. I have a wonderful human being that is my partner. And I found him after I'd done a lot of work on myself. And one thing I recognized after two marriages and kids from those marriages and going into this third marriage was that I never felt safe in a relationship. And so when I came to that level of intimacy with myself, it was something that I could tip my toe in the water with as it related to another person. And the more I could talk about that, what safety meant to me and what it felt like, and nurture that conversation with my partner, the more he could understand what I needed from him. It had to come from me, and I really got it. One day I woke up and I was distraught about the market having crashed, and I lost a lot of money, and I was like, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off going, what'll I do? What'll I do? And he looked at me and he said just a few words. Well, you have me. And then all of a sudden, it didn't matter. He made me feel safe. But I had given him the direction of what I needed to get to that conversation.
I love that you're saying this. And so when you said to get intimate with yourself, that really means to get to know everything going on inside of you and to start voicing how you feel about certain aspects. Like you were voicing how you feel about safety to your partner, and other people might have different things that they need, but to get so in touch with yourself that this is what you need, how to ask for what you need, how to talk about it. These are skills that I think a lot of people can really use.
And it's not that difficult, but again, it goes back to that idea that if you're grateful to know yourself, you have gratitude to going into understanding what it is that your wounds have given, the gift they've given you to know yourself. You need to feel, like for me, I need to feel safe and I need to trust the person I'm with. And that's all I had as criteria for a loving relationship. Everything else would fall into place. But it came out of my deepest wounds as a child. So I could own them, I could talk about them. The person I'm with could relate to them and understand them and feel compassion for me. We could cry together over it. This is how you build trust in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so for all the people out there who are wanting to find somebody to love or wanting to, draw that to them, the more they can feel that energy within themselves of, they're healed. That's the narrative. And they know themselves well enough to own the part of themselves that has these qualities. Yeah. and they have the courage to talk about them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So now, how do you solve some basic problems that you see couples having, like money? Money's a big one for everybody. Chores, family dynamics, especially when you see the negative pattern in your partner being acted out.
Well, and that is the reality of life. It's one of the hardest things that two people endure in a relationship is the juggling process of who gets to do what, how does this work out. I think that, the sense of give and take in all relationships is something that we have to focus on and not try to keep the scales even all the time, because they're not going to be. If you have two people working in a relationship, the reality is it's sometimes not going to be fair, to either side. But the key obviously is communication. If you're talking openly about your feelings, and you get to go on a ski trip and I'm here managing the fort and working full time and paying bills, I feel resentful, and then at least the communication allows the conversation to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Those daily things build up if you don't talk about your resentments, if you don't get it off of your shoulders, or you find a way to address it in a healthy, mature, emotionally intelligent way. So communication is really the key to everything, and that's owning your dark side. I can't be a controlling person here. I have to give it up,
It goes back to what you were saying about being intimate with yourself. If you know yourself well enough, then you'll be able to share that with another person. And of course, hopefully you've picked such a compassionate partner that really wants to work with you on all of
I
that.
want to add one thing that I think is really important to this dynamic, and that is if you martyr yourself, you're going to really be a loser. You will be miserable. Martyring in that dynamic of, overdoing in a relationship or, having these different responsibilities is one of the most damaging aspects or patterns that an intimate relationship can have, you know.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Now that you brought that up, that is a huge subject. And I'm sure there's a lot of women who even unknowingly martyr themselves because we have a tendency to just give so much in relationship because relationship means so much to us. So how can a woman recognize that she's martyring herself and how can she get herself out of it?
Okay, so you take the example of somebody who does a lot. She's a superwoman, and she's taking care of the kids, and she's makes a half the money in the family, and she does all these things. And her partner, perhaps, and this sounds stereotypical, but it happens a lot, is going off and meeting with the guys on one night a week because it's job related or XYZ. I think that if she chooses never to take herself out of her daily life, she could be martyring herself, and she's not giving herself the opportunity to go to a one-day spa experience or even go on a power walk on the weekend and leave the kids, even though she's worried about them, while he's watching football or whatever. Just her ability to pull herself away and not be that martyr is what will give her the ability to feel more happy in her life and more, balanced in terms of her meeting her own needs. So it's such an individual process, but she has to own, to some degree, she has to own that she's a martyr, and to some degree, she has to own that she's resentful. Or it could be him being a martyr, in a job and then having extra responsibilities at home, and he feels resentful. It's you've got to take care of your own needs sometimes. You have to. That's the key.
Boils down to self-love. How well are you taking care of yourself? And can you own up to the fact that you have a choice in how you are making this dynamic play out in your relationship? You don't have to just sit there and resent and feel like, oh, things don't ever go your way and you're the one that holds up the heavy load and all of that stuff. Just, let it go. As soon as you feel like you got too heavy of a load, let it go. Start talking about it.
Exactly. And I think that's really something very important to focus on.
Let's talk about our sex life.
Juicy.
Because that's also an area that there's a lot of issues in relationships. So how can the shadow ruin a healthy sex life?
Well, what came to my mind about this thought was the whole concept of 50 Shades of Grey right now. It's out there, and the world is sucking it up because it's the shadow, and it's the shadow in our intimate sex life. But what's so interesting is there's two ways to look at it. There's, wow, isn't this fun? Because it's so naughty, or, oh, I'd never do that. And so I just think that everyone who would be honest with themselves can relate to the different aspects of, our sexual experiences in life. And there's all the way from tantra and soul gazing and cuddling and, forehead touching and heartfelt, sweet, tender kisses to the wild side, where the level of intimacy is so great, it just feels dark and intense. And I think almost everybody who would be honest would admit they've had both sides of it.
Sure. Yeah.
And again, it's that same principle of being willing to trust yourself and having intimacy enough with yourself that you trust the person that you're with in a sexual experience and where it's going, and let it go there without having fear of not coming back again.
Right.
But I think a lot of things play a role in the dark side of sexuality, and that is people who are not interested in each other at a certain point after being together a long time. But to me, that's a result of them not being interesting to themselves. They're not acting in a certain way with themselves that keeps them feeling alive and holy and sacred in their own sexual journey. And it has nothing to do with the other person. Their lack of motivation or, whatever their problem is simply a result of other issues. And so the dark side of sexuality is it's again those tentacles of belief systems. Well, we've been together 20 years, there's not too much going on. I don't think so. I think that sexuality is everywhere. It's in the trees, it's in the plants, it's in everyone we meet. And we can get juicy by the experience of those we fall in love with every day and bring that energy back into our relationship with the person we're with. So,
Yes. So the longer that you're with somebody, the more you gotta look at how you can find something interesting in yourself to give, to share. Again, it goes back, it always comes back to our relationship with ourselves, doesn't it?
absolutely, it does. It's us. It's that we as individuals have the ability to live and breathe the fullness, the richness of life itself, and that we tune into all the subtleties on a daily basis of the intimacy of life that it gives us. And then we bring that intimacy back into our relationship with our partners and those we love. And that's what makes any relationship different and interesting and wonderful. And it could be in a color, it could be in some psychedelic thought you're having just based on, your own free spirit. It could come from anywhere.
Yes. Absolutely. And I love that you always bring in the spiritual part of it. And as we know, those of us who are spiritually oriented, well, there's never a dull moment because life is coming through you constantly in a new, fresh way if you allow yourself to tune into it and don't get bogged down in your own patterns and your own ruts.
And any single thing, any single thought form could be something that you can open up to, like the words honeymoon. If you think, though, that is such a sweet and tender word, but you could visualize honey inside the moon, which is a juicy thought, and that juicy thought could take you on another journey into your own, gratitude for yourself and feeling like you are the honey.
Yeah.
You are the moon, and all those thoughts relate to the goodness that you bring into a tender relationship or, whatever it is you're experiencing with another person. And I think when you want to fall in love, because my book is called Spiritual Makeover 10 Practices for Falling in Love with Your Life, you really have to fall in love with yourself first. And these things we're talking about today have to do with that experience of falling in love with yourself.
That is exactly what is going to attract to you if you're single, the partner that is going to love you. If you have fallen in love with yourself, someone else is going to reflect that back to you and totally fall in love with you.
And you, by the way, you walk into a room and your heads turn. There, what is it about that woman? What is it about that man? Wow, they are so full of goodness and joy and light. I want to just go over and talk to them.
People,
And
yeah.
that's where it begins.
People respond to that energy. They love it.
Right. But going back full circle to where we began, the more you lift off those other things from your spirit, the more free you are to be the person that walks in the room with all that gorgeous energy, juicy energy. I like the word juicy.
Juicy. Well, that is the bottom line. So, Sirah, it has been such a pleasure to have you here to talk about all of this. And I understand you have a free gift for the viewers on your website. So tell us about that.
I offer a free meditation. It's a 20-minute meditation. And at one point, that meditation was on the bestseller list of meditations. So I would encourage everyone to go to my website.
And I have the link right down here below.
The link is below, and check it out. And you'll see my name, and then you'll see the free meditation on the right side of my website. So enjoy. I hope you enjoy it. And it's been such a pleasure, Jolie, spending time with you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Sirah, for being with us. Thank you for your beautiful gift that you're offering everyone. And thank you for everything that you've shared with us and your beautiful spirit, most of all. So,
Thank you so much, Najula.
okay. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time on Heal the Shadow in your relationships, too.